So where do the Tennessee Titans go from here? What do they do this offseason? Because I think they're in an interesting spot. I mean, on one hand, you're probably thinking, okay, don't do too much different. You were really close to winning a Super Bowl this year. Like, this was definitely something that was in the cards for you, was winning a Super Bowl. I mean, you nearly beat the Bengals, who went to the Super Bowl. It took, Tannehill having maybe his worst performance of the season in the worst of spots for this to happen. So that was certainly an element of it. You could also argue how healthy was Derrick Henry truly in that Super Bowl, maybe, or in that playoff game. Maybe he wasn't as healthy. But I mean, you got the 1 seed. Like, you were there. You certainly had a good opportunity to win that football game. You had beaten the Chiefs in the AFC Championship game. So what do? Do you kind of say, okay, maybe we got a little lucky to get the 1 seed and try to improve? You probably have to do that to some degree. Don't try to win the 2021 Super Bowl. Try to win the 2022 Super Bowl. But also at the same time, I think it's a little bit fair to say, like, you don't have to do anything too drastically different because you're good. So first, let's just talk about where they're at right now. What is their cap situation and who are their upcoming free agents? So here it is. They're already negative $7 million. You have negative $7 million cap space. So, you got that. And you do have some guys to re-sign. You have Harold Landry, who Sports Track has estimated at he could be getting $17 million in the open market. So that's the number you see next to all these guys. It's how many, either Sports Track, or if Sports Track does not have a suggestion, that I made my own of how much they could be getting this off season. So Ben Jones, the other kind of big ticket guy, but then some, role players to some degree, Jaylen Brown, Anthony Ferkster, Rashad Evans, and Jeff Swaim here. So they would need $42 million if they wanted to re-sign everyone, meaning that they would have to clear $49 million. Now, how many of those guys that are going to re-sign, remains to be seen. They don't have a ton of free agents worth mentioning. These are the guys I considered key free agents. These aren't every single free agent on their roster. But, listen, you would probably certainly like to keep Harold Landry and Ben Jones. Ben Jones, of course, was, a good center for them, I think. So that's someone that I definitely think that, listen, for $11 million, getting a good center, I don't hate that whatsoever. I think that would make sense to me. I'd probably certainly want to keep him as well. And then Harold Landry had kind of a breakout season in a contract year. He had 12 sacks. Now, I think this is kind of one of those guys who I could see people kind of having some different opinions on how much value he has. For example, PFF doesn't have him as like a spectacular edge rusher by any means, but he still did have 43 pressures and 12 sacks, so he's going to get a big payday for sure. So if you do lose those two guys, you got to replace them at the very least. Now, also going over here, these are some guys that they could cut. Now, I'm not saying they should cut any of these guys, but just those are some options on the table. They could get rid of them if they so choose. Usually some, kind of guys getting up there. Like, you have Taylor Lewan, who's obviously very good, but you would save $12 million if you cut him. I don't think they will, but it's an option on the table. But like someone like Roger Saffold, who's getting $10 million, and he's going to be 34 next year. So maybe you decide that it's time to move on. I don't know if that's what you do, but you could do it. There's Zach Cunningham, who I would assume that they probably do move on from. I wouldn't be shocked if that happens. Now, maybe they do something where they just restructure his contract instead of just outright cutting him, because it'd be nice to keep him. But again, you save $10 million if you do it. And then guys like Jenkins, Lamb, and your punter Brett Kern are guys you could get rid of if you so choose. That's how you can clear cap space. Also worth mentioning, I know it's like, wait a second, we need $49 million and are we going to have to cut all these guys? Not exactly how the salary cap works. You can spend over the cap by restructuring contracts. So the average team spends around $30 million over the cap. Some teams spend as much as $60 million over the cap. So they're not in dire straits. It all depends on how much the owner is willing to spend. Going over here now, so this is going to be where they ranked in each positional category according to PFF. And there's a couple of really good and then a lot of mediocre. So that's kind of the interesting thing with the Titans, I think. You have really good passing grade, ninth best. That's that tier 2 passing grade. So, I don't think that there's been some kind of rumblings of do you move on from Tannehill? I think that would be silly. I mean, okay, listen, if you can get Russell Wilson, then sure, I see the logic behind it. But if you can't, probably best to just keep Ryan Tannehill. I guess the way I would phrase it is I wouldn't be looking to move on from Tannehill. You always want to look to upgrade at any position you possibly could, but I wouldn't be making a conscious effort to get rid of Tannehill by any means. Offensive line and receiving core could use some upgrades potentially. I think the receiving core might be easier to upgrade. They thought that the Julio Jones move would work out better than it ended up working out, so I give them credit for making an effort to make that work. It just didn't work out. And then the running game, of course, no Derrick Henry causes that to not be as good, so you would assume that if you can get a healthy Derrick Henry, then that should change things. But again, running backs fall off a cliff quickly, so there still is that concern. Now, PFF was not a huge fan of their pass rush as a whole. Again, kind of said like they weren't as high on Harold Landry as other people were, so that's kind of an interesting thing, and as the stats might suggest. I do think that their coverage kind of made the pass rush look better. The coverage was really good this season. And again, it's kind of a weird thing where it's almost more scheme than it is, talent in some ways. Coverage fluctuates massively, but they have some real talented players in their secondary. So I think that probably really where I would put my resources on mostly, if I can, would be trying to get that receiving core bolstered up a little bit. It hasn't been for lack of trying, but you could use some more talent. I thought Julio Jones did some nice things. He just really struggled to stay on the field, but you can still use probably a number 3 receiver anyways. So that's probably where I put most of my resources. And again, it's not like they have no talent there, but I'd rather probably get some more talent there. So yeah, as a whole, I think the Titans are in an all right spot. I mean, listen, your coach is fresh off winning Coach of the Year. You did get the 1 seed, and you're a good team. Like, okay, I get that on paper, you look at some of these teams like, okay, Cincinnati has this great quarterback and a lot of cap space. Chargers, great quarterback, a lot of cap space. A team like the Chiefs, maybe not a lot of cap space, but you have Patrick Mahomes, and kind of similar thing with the Buffalo Bills. How are you going to compete with those teams? It is going to be difficult, but one way you can do it is just by, finding the value positions and trying to make the most of those. If your coverage is what it is, then okay, maybe get another, quality receiver. Maybe Julio Jones returns to form, and now you have 3 number 1 receivers. That would be awesome. So basically, with every team, I think you could always use an extra receiver. It's kind of just one of those positions where, I think it's an undervalued position. So do what you can to make that work. But you can do stuff to improve the pass rush, even if you are of the belief that Harold Landry is really good, which, I think I like him better than PFF does. So I think that's good. You have a good, solid interior defensive line. And so getting maybe just adding an extra guy in that mix could be good. Or maybe just trying to bolster the offensive line. There's things you could do to improve it. So it'll be an interesting offseason, I think, for the Tennessee Titans. I think they're in an all right spot. I don't think that they're a mess, quite frankly. I do feel a little bit like this might have been their opportunity, though. I do feel like this was a pretty big blown opportunity. If they held on to beat Cincinnati, that would have gone a long way. They could have potentially won the Super Bowl. They were that close. And the issue is that just next year, I think that the competition and the road to get to the Super Bowl just might be a little tougher. That's kind of the thing. So you have to get better too. That's how it works. So yeah, that's what I think about the Titans and their situation. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. What are your thoughts? Always love hearing from you. And of course, as always, thanks for watching.